was able to focus with my teamwork. Okay, there you go.
All right, here we go. Key at the top, it becomes a war for the decision within the debate. The best methodology is hip-hop pedagogy, redefinition of revolutionary, redefinition of the nation, what it means to be. Being is turned upside down with the funk of pedagogical turntables and the microphone of blackness. We call hip-hop pedagogy. That is a definition of what hip-hop means. It's never answered by the negative team, which means that we get a beat down, that there's no escape for it. Because age comes before beauty and sense comes before what we redefine what you think is misogynistic, because all that happened is you took the ass beating. Let me go old school. There's zero answer to the inherent problem of the resolution. The dean evidence is the reason the economic rationality is a justification for energy production is left of voice to those with different experiences than you. And the decision-making process, another example of the nation-building process, and how we define the United States federal government as a representative of those pricks in Washington, D.C. don't give a fuck about disposable bodies up to burn in the smoke and broke down incinerators and nuclear waste dumps that spill toxics into the lungs of children. We're the only ones that's discussing the resolution from a U.S. federal government standpoint, and the inherent problem becomes significant and harmful. Debate is a monocultural activity, and this polycultural environment of death has become extinct and becomes a tool of white supremacy that normalizes the notion of identity that functions to serve as a heteronormative, racist, sexist, and ethical privileged stance that the negative loves to speak about, and they can see the white evidence which turns all their misogynistic turns back, which they don't have any evidence for at all, that is rooted in the way we define nation state. Is why our terminal impact is the straight turn to their static notion of U.S. federal government. The case arguments are reason to reject the framework arguments, our advocacy solve for this significant harmful problem inherent in the status quo, which is the only argument they see you vote negative presumption are. It's a discussion of the topic. Our hymen evidence says that breaking down economic rationality is relying on the voices of the other. No, we don't define that as black, brown, red, gay, straight, rich, poor, male, or we just define those are the ones that are excluded from the model of negotiation, that the static U.S. federal government that is defined in the framework as the negative. We're the only ones that are reading offense on that. The Hall evidence is hip-hop 101, and the reason that the negative flunks this class, which says the pedagogical difference that seeks to redefine and funk out of the traditional notions of academics seems to parallel the Afro-pessimist quad theory of the original 1 and C. He said that we're reductionists, but that's answered above. You're the only one that reduces that. The Polton evidence that uses LBS as an example of spillover doesn't represent the presentation of the 1 and C. That there's many different people that debate hip-hop in different ways, which means you can't hold us to a static notion of what hip-hop means, because that's reductionist in and of itself. He says anti-blackness structures civil society. That's right, and you are the root cause of that through your definition of the U.S. federal government, which is why this offense runs. His number 2 argument says that we don't have a song jam kit. That's answered above. That's the 8-101. I told you how we're an inherent problem that's significant and harmful that we solve for through our hip-hop pedagogy. He says conditionality is a voting issue. It makes us a moving target, but though 2AC is predicated off of the concessions that's made by the quad theory alternative and the Afro-pessimist critique, which he never answers, which means negative conditionality is a worse definition. And the next argument that he reads down below says hip-hop is conceded. That's not true. We don't say that. He says bend over the table is heteronormative, but you don't define why that's heteronormative. Bend over the table can mean anything. And we don't say that we're quad performers. We say that we're a hip-hop pedagogical stance that includes a different voice. There's no impact to that. He said that there's no impact to the affirmative. That's not true. We just read that at the top of the 1AC framework. The process of defining the nation through various methods, projection on education and academics are becoming increasingly mindful of how we relate national experience to local resolution, and the educators need to remain vigilant in initiating questions about how to affirm particular conceptions of the nation through history. Need to move beyond the feel-good global educational ideology. The question of how the nation remains central to education. That's Trapinko number 1. The second argument says that we straight turn the static notion of the nation to satisfy the historical narrative, even while there remains a lack of consensus among scholars about how the nation itself is defined. The national myth situated in historical paradoxes, what builds the nation and serves the foundation of the nation-building project in the first place. It is what needs to be rejected, which means as soon as they ran framework, you should vote affirmative on presumption, and moving beyond the critique of limits, challenge the material and discursive practices assembled and advanced within the nationalist agenda of education itself. A critique of political, ideological abuse of histories is particularly necessary to unmask the complicity of history, which means when they say we're not a static notion, that's right, because history can't be defined within a static notion because of what your quadernist arguments say and what your Afro-pessimist arguments say. It's never static. It's the history of experiences of many different people that make up that we the people type argument. And the last piece of Trapinko evidence we have said the more historical examination of the nation is affirmed, allows us the opportunity to see how the idea of a nation and out of the advance of an understanding of the nation with a larger global picture, and offers a more inclusive way of understanding how it functions. The discourse of the 1AC is often through their interpretation. And line by line, he says that we don't have an interpretation, but that's not true. The interpretation that we use within the debate is defined above by Trapinko evidence, which I explained. And he says that we have multiple interpretations nations. That's right, we have multiple historicities of what the nation-building process is. It's not static, which is the reason why your fairness arguments are not fair to us, and it flips back the arguments on you, and it's a key to education, because we're the only ones that are discussing the topic through the notion of how that affects energy production. And he says that affirmative negative ground is an issue. That's right, you could have negated us, but you chose not to. You ran a framework argument that forces and pinpointed us into what an affirmation really is, which we negate. So that turns your affirmative and negative ground into a topsy-turvy, which is why it's quad theory. And he said U.S. federal government is our interpretation. That's exactly what we're talking about. We'll concede that argument. That's impacted by your quadness evidence and your Afro-pessimism evidence. It's a reason that you double-turn yourself and you should be rejected. Now, it's a joke that he tries to talk about the Valdivia Southern evidence. It says that debate operates monoculturally through definitions like the U.S. federal government and not allowing people to debate from different standpoints and multiple ideas of what the United States federal government is. And in a polycultural environment that includes many different people, that means our activity becomes extinct, which means people like leaders of a beautiful struggle never happen because they don't gain the critical research skills that are necessary to define and debate the nation differently and to attack the political, social realm of frameworks differently. And that's what our argument is, which is why the Wilderson evidence rejects your status notion of the U.S. federal government, why your Warren evidence rejects that, and why everything else that you read in the debate is a functional double turn to us. I think this is the crux for the affirmative. Kind of close.
No, you forgot to do hip-hop pedagogy.
Nah, we think our evidence is hip-hop pedagogy.
That's exactly why you don't know what hip-hop pedagogy is.
Right, except we're defining that.
If your evidence is hip-hop pedagogy, then what's going down
there
in
might
the
be
debate
one
downstairs is hip-hop pedagogy.
Except they're not reading evidence that redefines the notion of what the U.S. federal government is.
I've never heard a hip-hop artist do that either.
Well, then you didn't read the Hall evidence and the Hyman evidence and all the rest of the evidence of the 1AC. Well,
hip-hop, but
Technically, the debate is over.
well, I don't know. That's the judge's decide.
Well, they never decided to defend their ass.
Oh, yes.
How would you vote?
Let me call you.